So hi everyone, my name is Alessio Ponzio. I'm an assistant professor in modern European history and history of gender and sexuality at the University of Saskatchewan. And together with Miriam Bensley-Main, we have been working this year to revamp 2S LGBTQIA+ History Month Canada. And I thought it was a very good idea to start interviewing also people who work in archives throughout the country. So far, I've been interviewing historians, talking about our own work, but I think it's also very important to understand how archives work. So today we have two guests from the University of Winnipeg who will talk a little bit about the Two-Spirit archives. Brett Lougheed, who is a university archivist and digital curator at the University of Winnipeg Archives, and which is the proud stewards of the Two-Spirit archives, and Albert McLeod, original donor of the Two-Spirit archives, very involved with the University of Winnipeg Archives. I'm going to ask both of you if you can briefly introduce yourself and tell us maybe who you are, if you want to add something. I don't know if maybe Brett want to go first, and then we're going to listen to Albert.
Sure, yeah. So I am the University Archivist and Digital Curator at the University of Winnipeg Archives. I also serve as Director of the Oral History Center. I have an archival studies degree from the University of Manitoba, and I've been working in the archival profession for over 20 years now.
Oh, thank you, Brett. And Albert?
Yeah, I'm Albert McLeod, originally come from the Pas in northern Manitoba. And my ancestry is Cree and Scottish. And I've been working in the Two-Spirit Liberation movement for over 40 years, and in Manitoba since 1986. And so I'm the principal donator to the Two-Spirit archives and continue to promote it and encourage people to donate their materials to the archives.
Thank you, Albert, for introducing yourself as well. So can you tell us about the genesis of the Two-Spirit archives at the University of Winnipeg?
Well, I had, been involved since 1979 in the Two-Spirit movement, and moved back to Winnipeg in 1983. And I had, by 11 years ago, I had quite a collection of materials, photographs from the early 1980s of my colleagues who were, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis gays and lesbians. And I had sort of like T-shirts and posters, and I approached the University of Winnipeg Archives and asked them if they'd be interested in my materials, because I felt it was quite important in terms of Indigenous experience, Indigenous history, an important story to be told. And thankfully, they agreed to house it there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Brett, how long have you been involved in the Two-Spirit archives? If you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I came to the University of Winnipeg Archives in 2014. Prior to that, I was working at the University of Manitoba Archives, where they have a collection of the gay and lesbian archives of Manitoba. And there's very little Two-Spirit material in that collection. And when I was at that institution, I was hearing all about, the wonderful donation that Albert had made to the University of Winnipeg, and we were directing folks there when people would come in looking for Two-Spirit material. So when I came to the University of Winnipeg, I knew that, there's this wonderful collection that Albert had donated. And when Albert and I were finally able to connect, there was mutual interest between the two of us in expanding upon Albert's initial donation. And so that in 2018, we had a meeting with community members who all agreed that, it was important for there to be a Two-Spirit archives, that it made sense for it to be at the University of Winnipeg. And we really started to do our work at that point.
And can I ask you, one of you, if there are other major archives like yours, or if the University of Winnipeg Archives is absolutely a unique, in Canada?
Well, there is a sort of comparative archive at the University of Minnesota. and in the United States, which is a similar donation of materials from a Two-Spirit activist. And I think also in San Francisco, some of the work of the early gay American Indians is available there, a sort of separate LGBT history center.
Thank you. So basically, but if somebody lives in Canada and want to study this type of history, must go to the University of Winnipeg, right? So I think that is what you're saying if you're in Canada in the end, probably.
Yeah, we like to think of ourselves as kind of the primary research center for Two-Spirit material in Canada. There are pockets of records documenting Two-Spirit individuals and organizations in other queer archives across Canada. But our archives is the one that is solely focusing or centering Two-Spirit people in our collection policy.
Thank you. And what are the main funds? I don't know if Albert or Brett wants to answer, what are the main funds that a historian, a scholar, a person can come and see at your archives?
Well, we operate on a shoestring budget. So we're part of the library. The archives budget is built into the library's budget. So really what we're doing is focusing just kind of the resources that we have as part of the archives on the development of the Two-Spirit archives, maybe taking attention away from other areas of the archive so that we can focus on the Two-Spirit archives. We've also looked into several grant funding opportunities. So we've received grants from the Winnipeg Foundation in the past to do an oral history project. We've received funds from the provincial government, the Department of Culture and Heritage, different project-based grant funding, which has kind of helped us to continue to move forward in different ways.
Mm-hmm. And Albert, what are the main, in your opinion, what is one of the most beautiful, important artifacts, that a person can find at the archive? Something that you really like or you think is very, very important?
Well, one of the recent donations is from a colleague called Kelly Houle, who's a trans First Nations woman, and she donated her beaded crown, her jingle dress, and her moccasins, which are material donations to the archive. So I think that's very important because it is representing the cultural aspect of identity, but also the recognition of trans Indigenous women historically and in a contemporary sense as well. So those are things of beauty, of art, but also culture and philosophy about, in pre-colonial history, Two-Spirit trans women were well known in Indigenous communities in the Americas. So that's not something new, but to have it now as part of a permanent collection is very important.
And do you think there is, Albert, some artifacts in the archive that should receive maybe more attention, or something that you would like, to be seen as studied by someone?
Well, we have a number of books, like some from Thompson Highway, some anthropological research books like Two Spirits from 1997. So those are sort of academic books, and some of them are written by Two-Spirit academics or anthropologists. So I think those are important as well for researchers. And so that's kind of the key area, is encouraging other people to donate books that they have that are related research or novels and those kind of things that really have that sort of full description of an individual's lived experience or career or community experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I mean, that is really, really important, I think, to highlight. And what is the audience? So who are the people who usually come to the archives? I mean, are they scholars, students? Are they coming from outside of Canada? Are most of the time Canadians? And did the access change during, after COVID. So if you can tell us something about really audience and how people can access the archives.
Sure. So, yeah, up until this point, our audience has been very heavily academic and scholarly. People come from all over the world, really, to access this set of records, which speaks to the dearth of Two-Spirit material existing in Western archives across North America. But one of our goals is to increase community usage of the collection, to bring in members of the Two-Spirit community and spend time with the records. So we've developed a brochure very recently that we're putting into the hands of folks in the community, informing them about the archives in the hopes that more people from the community will come in and use the collection, and not just academics. During COVID, of course, we were shut down, as all archives were in North America. We've so far to this point, we've digitized a small portion of the collection, which is available to people online, so that they don't have to come to the archives to view that material. We're part of a large collaborative digitization project that will allow us to digitize some more material very recently. We've created a digital oral history project, so those oral history recordings are available online. So whenever we're able to do so responsibly, and that means protecting the privacy of the individuals featured in the records, we aim to make the records as accessible as possible, and increasingly we're trying to do that online. All of our collection descriptions are also available online to help people facilitate access to the records.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And can I ask you both why you think that these archives matter? It's a very big question. It's a very important question. But I think it's, for us historians, for scholars, for people who are really interested in history, archives are key. They are important. They're essential. And I think that these particular archives is very, very important. So, but I'm asking you both, why do these specific archives matter in your opinion?
Well, I think we have to look at Euro-Christian colonization as a phase or a period of the last 500 years where a lot of indigenous societies were really impacted by colonialism and Christianity and the imposition of the binary gender identity, as well as for heteronormativity. And now 500 years later, we're coming back to a lot of these ancient societies reclaiming the structures of their communities, which were more egalitarian, more inclusive, and more healthy and spiritual. So I think this archive is that narrative. It is that Canadian story about the history of inclusion among the different Indigenous peoples in North America, particularly, that's embedded in their language and their ceremonies and their philosophy. Against a backdrop now in North America that is really this rising anti-homophobia or anti-LGBT and anti-trans hatred in America, that this is a good counterpoint, because this is the truth, this is the narrative, and this is the evidence, right? So it is important, I think, for all sectors of society when we talk about truth and reconciliation. This is reconciling that colonial past where Two-Spirit people were, erased from our history, and now we're putting that information, restoring that information back in.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important, to highlight the fact that in the end, given the present situation in Canada, in North America, it's really very important to highlight, how we should fight specifically for specific groups that are particularly under attack at the moment in North America and in the Western world. And what about Brett? So why do you think these archives matter?
Well, obviously, I'm in complete agreement with what Albert said. I will just add that what we're trying to do is center Two-Spirit people in an alternative narrative to the heteronormative narrative that is, persistent in Canada today. We're displaying evidence that Two-Spirit people have existed over time, despite the genocidal tactics undertaken upon them by the Canadian government and church and state. And the archives is evidence of that survival. And I think that by providing evidence of that survival over time, it can instill a sense of belonging within the community, because they just hadn't seen themselves represented in the records very often until now. So for that reason, I think the Two-Spirit archives serve that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also want to make, high schools or junior high and high schools and university safe spaces for, people of color, Two-Spirit people, that they feel they could focus on their studies and not having to battle about gender identity or sexual orientation or inclusion. And that's so important as in terms of the foundation of their careers and their lives, that they leave these institutions with diplomas or degrees, because that's what they're for. And that the university housing this archive is a step in that way, that people do feel it is safer, it is inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And now that we are dealing again here in Saskatchewan with also a lot of issues with students, in high school and throughout the country, I think it's very, very important to make students understand about this past and make them feel, somehow safe studying, also this past. And do you have upcoming events that are going to happen soon that you want to share with us?
Well, we are hosting the Two-Spirit Chief Local from the Manitoba Métis Federation in celebration of 2S LGBTQIA+ History Month later this month. That is not open to the public, but it's an event that we're hosting. We also hope to promote the archives a little bit on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and X through, again, in celebration of 2S LGBTQIA+ History Month. A lot of our programming happens around Pride Week in Winnipeg, which is in June. So there'll be further events, planned for later in the year, but that's kind of all that's on the schedule for now.
Oh, that's great. I mean, let me know when you have, when you want to share something also with us. That would be great. And my last question is probably for both of us, or for who want to ask, is really about how can people support the archives? In your opinion, what is the best way for scholars, but not only scholars, also institutions, to support what you're doing?
I think around the world, like I said earlier, in that 500 years of colonization, many indigenous societies were impacted in India, Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Samoa, the Philippines, and Southeast Asia, where they still need to do that work about, investigating their languages and cultures and the places of LGBTQ people in their histories and societies, because they were there for a reason. So I think, our archive here can be an example in Europe or in the Middle East or other places in the world where people can do similar things and do research and find their histories there. And I think for, Euro Christians, is in their own history. They have transgender people, they have LGBTQ intersex people. It's a thing that's been lost. It's been, hidden, or it's been edited out of their history. So they have to go on their own journey as well. So I think that the other piece is for people to donate their items they have, because I'm in an aging population, and my history is going to be very different from someone who was born 30 years ago, right? So it's that, just encouraging people to value what they have and think about donating important pieces.
No, thank you. That is very, very important, Albert. And Brett, do you want to add something to what Albert said?
Sure. I would just add that to spread the word, let people know that the Two-Spirit Archives at the University of Winnipeg are here. Absolutely, if you have materials that you want to potentially donate, to please reach out. I'm happy to have those conversations with folks. That's a wealth of material here. I would also just urge people doing research on queer studies to don't marginalize the experiences of Two-Spirit people, that they are of value and they matter just as much as anyone else.
Thank you. I mean, I want really to thank you both for all your answers to my questions. I really do hope that the archives is going to be widely known even more than is known now, because I think it's a very, very important archives. And I want to thank you again for this chat with me. So thank you, Brett, and thank you, Albert. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, bye.